After this lesson, you should be able to go to Desmos.com and graph an equation. You will need to be able to use three features. You will need to be able to enter an equation where y is in terms of x, to be able to adjust the window and understand why there is sometimes a need to adjust the window, and to use the table to evaluate the function at various values of x. We'll use the equation y equals negative x squared minus 20x minus 80 to illustrate each of these features. Before we head over to Desmos.com and graph this equation, do you already know the shape of what this graph is going to look like? This function has an x squared and the leading coefficient is negative. If you know your parent functions, you already know this is going to be an upside down parabola. Next, when we go over to Desmos.com to graph this equation, I want you to keep in the back of your mind that you already know that this should look like an upside down parabola. Here we are at Desmos.com. Let's use the bottom left-hand corner keypad to enter in our equation. Y equals negative x. To enter into the second power, you use the button a squared. Keep in mind, if we had a power higher than 2, we would use the a to the b power. All right, y equals negative x squared minus 20x minus 80. Isn't that interesting? The graph appears to be a line. There is more to graphing a function than to just enter in an equation y equals something. This is why you spend so much time on parent functions in the previous class. You should have a rough idea what the graph looks like before you even enter it. Knowing that this should be an upside down parabola, I can envision that I am missing the top of the parabola and that it would continue coming down to the left side. So we need to adjust our window. To make adjustments, I'm going to click the wrench in the top right-hand corner. A drop-down menu appears, and then I'm going to go ahead and pick Projector Mode before I worry about the window. The Projector Mode just makes things a little bit darker and easier to read. We can change how much of the x-axis that we see by going just below the green check-marked x-axis. Currently, the lower bound is negative 10, and if you notice in the graph, as far as we can see to the left is negative 10. I'm going to change that to negative 16, and notice now we can see further to the left. We can see all the way to the left to negative 16, and more of our parabola is visible. I'm going to now change the upper bound of the x-axis to 4. All that happened is that we're seeing a little bit less to the right. Currently, the numbers visible on the x-axis are negative 5, negative 10, and negative 15. So we're counting by 5s. But I want to just change that to say, let's count by 4s. Next step, I'm entering 4. And notice now the numbers along the x-axis are negative 16, negative 12, negative 8, negative 4, and so forth. So we can see that we're counting by 4. We still have quite a few extra vertical lines. So if you do want to get rid of those, you can uncheck the box next to minor grid lines. That just cleans it up just a bit. We still don't see the top of the parabola, so let's change the lower bound and upper bound on the y-axis. I'm going to change the lower bound on the y-axis to -15, and then I'm going to change the upper bound on the y-axis to 25. Now I can see the entire parabola, but I would like to count by maybe some smaller increments. So I'm going to step by 5. If you click anywhere on this graph, then that drop-down menu disappears, and now we have a nice graph of the parabola. Let's just enter in the lower and upper bound and step for the graph that we just created to make sure you have this down. The lower bound on the x-axis comes from the lowest number here. So in this case, that is -16. So I'm going to put here -16. All right, then the upper bound number is going to come from the number farthest to the right. And in this case, that is 4. The step is the distance between these numbers. So in between on the x-axis, they're counting by 4. So the step is 4. The notation that you would see when you're not using Desmos for this is a bracket, -16, comma, 4. Just saying that our x-axis has been drawn from -16 to 4. Next, focusing on the y-axis and what numbers we should put here. Smallest to largest. So the smallest number, as low as we can go, is -10. The biggest number, the highest that we can go, is 25. The distance between our numbers, that's what we're counting by. So we're counting by 5. So our step here is 5. But the notation for the lower bound to the upper bound on the y-axis, we would see -10 to 25. All right, now prepare to be dazzled. We are going to use the table on the graphing calculator. But before we do that, we're just going to do it by hand so you can really appreciate how cool this is on the graphing calculator. So if we made the t-chart, we would start by just putting an x and a y on the top of our t-chart. Then we can substitute values for x into the equation to figure out what the y is, and then we have a point on the graph. So I'm going to just start by substituting in, let's say, -10. So we would grab the equation and replace every x in the equation with the number -10. Simplify using order of operations. Be careful, a negative here is not a positive. We want to do exponents before multiplication. So -10 times -10 is 100, which will then be multiplied by that -1 out front. and then negative 100 plus 200 minus 80 is 20. So let's head over to Desmos.com and we're going to check out the table feature by entering negative 10 into this function. Here we are at Desmos, prepare to be dazzled. Just above the equation, there's a gear just above that X. So I'm going to click that gear, and when I click it, it's going to change the look. Okay, now you see a little T-chart. You see a table. So I'm going to click the table, and all of a sudden, there are some pre-entered values in for X and answers Y. A moment ago, by hand, we entered in negative 10. You can click in each one of these X's. You can change any one of them. So I'm going to backspace over negative 2, and I'm going to enter in negative 10. Bam! 20. We didn't have to simplify by hand using order of operations. Come on, holy cow, that is crazy cool. Notice I can also click on the dot. It highlighted the negative 10, 20 on the parabola. So I'm going to click on it and it will label the point. You can also just click where the graph is crossing the x-axis, and then those x-intercepts are going to appear. Trying that one more time just to make sure you have it down. Let's say I substitute negative 8. Well, if I substitute negative 8, I get out 16. So we have a coordinate negative 8, 16. Here's a bonus feature because I just can't help myself. If you click the red circle that's to the left of the equation, it's going to give you some other color options. So let's say I want to make the parabola blue, maybe green. You can make this parabola the color of your mood. Okay, I think you are ready for the assignment. Good luck. If you survive, please come again.